Why? What did they need to continue construction? Money. Very good. So finally, additional funds were allocated by Congress, and construction started again in 1822. So after additional funds were allocated by Congress, the construction of the Cumberland Road continued in 1822, and it went pretty strong until 1838. And during that 16-year period of construction, the Cumberland Road actually extended all the way across Ohio, Indiana, and into Illinois. So it actually was now from Maryland through West Virginia, through Ohio, through Indiana, and into Illinois during that 16-year period. So now it ran from Maryland, West Virginia, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois. And when they completed that construction in 1838, they renamed the Cumberland Road to what? Became known as what? The National Road. Now, who built this road? Not specifically, who paid for the road being built? The federal government. And as that road was being completed, after they restarted construction, they turned over the road to the states in which it went through. So all of a sudden, Maryland was responsible for the Cumberland Road, which became the National Road when it was in Maryland. Once it went into West Virginia was responsible for it. Once it went into Ohio, Ohio became responsible for it. The road that went through Indiana became their responsibility, and the road into Illinois became theirs. At the end, when it was all said and done, the federal government turned over each section of the National Road to the states in which it ran through, and it was their job to maintain it. Is that why we have a Wyoming Department of Transportation that snow plows the roads? They don't go into Montana, do they? No, they turn around the border and go back. Each state's responsible. That's where it started. Well, this national road, because we had so many people in the western lands now, was very, very important. It was crucial to the economy of the United States. It really boosted our economy and became part of this American system. Very good move. So if you kind of do a little bit of a summary here, the American system was based on the reestablishment of the Second National Bank of the United States. It also showed the solid foundation that we were going to protect our own factories here in the United States by putting a high tariff on manufactured goods that came into our country from Britain. That was the Tariff Act of 1816, and we fixed our transportation system. Because we now had 22 states in the nation, we had to do something, and it began with the start of the Cumberland Road in 1806 and ended in 1838 with it extending from Maryland through West Virginia, through Ohio, through Indiana, to Illinois. Okay? Very good plan put together by Henry Clay that really did set us apart from other foreign countries economically and let us really become independent. Okay? All right. We'll finish up this quiz material with the profile on President Monroe. Tell you a little bit about President Monroe. Now, I'll tell you how bad the Federalist Party's getting. What do we have coming up? The election of 1820. Who's going to run for the Republicans? Well, President Monroe and Vice President Tompkins are going to run for the Republican side for president. Guess who they ran against in this election? No?
Nobody?
Nobody. Very good, my dear. They ran unopposed. Can you imagine? That's how bad the Federalist Party had become. They couldn't even put candidates up to run. So in the election of 1920, this is the first thing under the profile of President Monroe, he was re-elected president unopposed. Never even faced a challenger. So, we'll tell you a little bit about two-term President James Monroe. First of all, James Monroe was born in April of 1758 in Virginia. He was born in April of 1758 in Virginia. He grew up and attended elementary schools as any other young man would, but he went to high school at Campbelltown Academy, which tells you what? He was rich, and what type of school would it be? Private. So he went to Campbelltown Academy, the high school, private school. And guess who one of his classmates was at Campbelltown Academy in high school? A fellow by the name of John Marshall. Who was what? Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, later. So Monroe attended high school at Campbelltown Academy, and one of his classmates there was John Marshall, who would eventually become Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Well, he went through high school, grew up, and on February 6th of 1786, I'm kind of out of order here, but I'll complete it. You can put it where you want. On February 16th, 1786, he married a woman by the name of Elizabeth Courtwright. And they married in New York City. So on February 16th of 1786, Monroe married Elizabeth Courtwright in New York City. And the couple eventually had 2 daughters. February 16th, 1786, Monroe married Elizabeth Courtwright in New York City, and the couple had 2 daughters. Well, I kind of got out of order because what do you think happened before 1786? It was a little significant. Started about 1776 and went on for a while. Revolutionary War. And during the American Revolution, Monroe served in the Continental Army under Washington. And when the war was over, he had earned the rank of major. So during the Revolutionary War, James Monroe served in the Continental Army under Washington, and he finished the Revolutionary War with the rank of major. And what do you think he went into after the Revolutionary War that allowed him to be president eventually? Went into what field? Politics. And he actually held 8 different political positions of importance during his career. And I'll list them in chronological order. These are the political positions that James Monroe held. Maybe held more important political positions, separate positions, than any man in history. His first experience in politics happened in 1790. When he's elected United States Senator. 1790, he was elected as a United States Senator. And he served until 1794. So he was a United States Senator from 1790 to 1794. Then, in 1794, he was appointed U.S. Minister to France. Who appointed him to that position? Who was the president in 1794? When was our first political election? Remember? Washington. Okay? And he served as U.S. Minister to France from 1794 to 1796, 2 years. 1794 to 1796. Then he took a little time off, and he was elected governor of Virginia in 1799. He was elected governor of Virginia in 1799. And he served for 4 years as governor, ending his run in 1803. So from 1799 to 1803, James Monroe served as governor of Virginia. Then he was appointed U.S. Minister to Great Britain. U.S. Minister to Great Britain. And he served in that capacity from 1803 to 1807. Who appointed him U.S. Minister to Great Britain? Jefferson? No, Jefferson's right. Well then, after finishing his stint as U.S. Minister to Great Britain in 1807, he was elected again as governor of Virginia. and he served as governor of Virginia a second time from 1807 to March of 1811. I want you to think on this one, see if you can think beyond the scope. Why did he quit in March of 1811? Why didn't he wait till December and finish the year? Why did he quit as governor in March of 1811? Why is that? Anybody know? Well, kind of. You're close. He was appointed what in March of 1811 after James Madison was elected president? Secretary of State. So he becomes Secretary of State under James Madison in March of 1811 because that's when Madison was inaugurated and appointed him. So he serves as governor of Virginia from 1807 to March of 1811 a second time, and then he's named Secretary of State under James Madison from 1811 to 1817. Now this is kind of interesting because for 2 years in 1814 and 1815, along with being Secretary of State, he also served as Madison's Secretary of War. So he had two cabinet positions at the same time. He served as Secretary of State from 1811 to 1816, but during that 6-year period, for 2 years, he also served as Secretary of War from 1814 to 1815. So he was both Secretary of State at one time and Secretary of War at the same time. And his final position in 1816 became what? President of the United States. And he went from 1816 to 1824 because he was elected in 1816 and he ran unopposed and was elected again in 1820 and served out those 2 terms at that point. Now, I'm going to give you 3 members of Monroe's cabinet during his presidency that were very, very influential people that will go on to other bigger and better things. You ever heard of a guy named John Quincy Adams? John Quincy Adams, who would later become a president, served as Monroe's Secretary of State. So he had a good cabinet. John Quincy Adams, who would later become president, served as Monroe's Secretary of State. William H. Crawford, who we'll be talking about later, served as Monroe's Secretary to the Treasury. William H. Crawford served as Monroe's Secretary to the Treasury. And just for the fun of it, which of the famous 3 served as Monroe's Secretary of War? You got a 33% chance, Tristan, of getting this right. Of the famous 3 that we talked about, those 3 guys, Clay, Calhoun, and Webster, which of those 3 served as Monroe's Secretary of War, do you think?
Calhoun.
That's right. He had a 1 in 3 chance. Got it right. John C. Calhoun served as Monroe's Secretary of War. So he had a very, very good cabinet. Well, obviously, after the presidency, what did Monroe do? He retired in March of 1825 when the new president was inaugurated. He went into retirement. The problem was Monroe wasn't very good with finances himself. He was $75,000 in debt at the time. Now think about this. This is 1825. Now how much do you think that'd be today? I bet $1 million probably. Okay? So he was very much in debt. Well, in 1826, on top of his debt problems, his wife died. And where did he live? Because he was governor there twice. Virginia. He had an estate in Virginia, and because of his wife's death in 1826 and the fact he was in debt, he had to sell his estate in Virginia and he moved to New York. And who do you think he lived with in New York? What's your guess? Who else would he live with? Wife's died, so who would he live with maybe? One of the daughters. Very good. He lived with one of his daughters and her husband. So after his wife's death in 1826, Monroe moved from his estate in Virginia to New York, where he lived with one of his daughters and her husband. On July 4th, 1831, July 4th of 1831, President Monroe died of heart failure. July 4th, 1831. Now here's a statistic you might not have known. When Monroe died of heart failure on July 4th, 1831, he became the third of our first 5 presidents that died on Independence Day. 3 of our first 5 presidents died on July 4th. So, on July 4th of 1831, President Monroe died of heart failure and became the third of our first 5 presidents of the United States to die on Independence Day. Now, what I'd like you to do, since the end of the lecture, you're welcome to take out your phone and tell me who the other 2 were. Well, let's see. Let's make sure we know. Heck, you could be right, Paris. I wouldn't put my money